Today, we're supported by Isotoner. And listen, I absolutely love the Zenz line. It's Zenz from Isotoner. These are adorable little slip-ons that are just built for moms on the go like me. Today, I'm wearing a gray pair that's called the Zenz Women Serenity slip-on. It has this adorable little pin tuck in the fabric, these cute little white soles, and these were featured on oprahdaily.com. So you know that they're popular, right? They are machine washable, super soft, like really flexible and very, very lightweight. They have this better than memory foam technology in them. So really comfortable, but also really lightweight. And I love that they look more like a shoe than a slipper. So it's the perfect everyday slip-on to take you from your house to work, to yoga, to coffee, to the bus stop, wherever you need to be. And for the next 2 weeks, my friends at Isotoner are giving our listeners 35% off of the Zenz line. Just head over to isotoner.com and use the code BRILLIANT35 to get your discount. Okay, guys, go find your happy place with Zenz.
I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant.
This is episode 233 of the Brilliant Balance podcast, Parenting Aging Parents with Mike and Kim Barnes. So, hello, my friends, and welcome back. I am looking forward to sharing today's episode with you. I know a lot of us have experiences, and they take different shapes and forms with the people that we love getting older. I was thinking back as I was preparing for this interview about my experiences with my grandparents as they got older. My grandfathers both passed away when I was very young. I was 2, and we lost both of them in the same year. So I don't have a lot of firsthand memories of either of them. But my grandmothers were around much longer than that, and both of them actually lived with us for a period of time when I was anywhere from late grade school through like junior high, and in the case of one of my grandmothers, into high school. And so I have really deep memories of having them living with us through various stages of illness and decline. One of them ultimately succumbed to colon cancer, and one of them had Alzheimer's for many years. So, I have most of my experience with this topic for today in really as it relates to my grandparents, and also to a very, very dear family friend who I refer to as an aunt my whole life. I have not gotten into this chapter yet with my own parents, and many of the women in our coaching community have. And so this is a topic that comes up a lot. It's really fraught with emotion. It's also really fraught with incremental time and energy demands, that we often give willingly. Certainly we did in the case of my grandparents and my aunt, but the demands are still real. And so I think as you reflect on where you are in this pattern, how this is showing up in your life, if it is already, if it hasn't yet, but you see it as on the horizon, I was really, really happy with the content that was shared in the interview that I did that I'm going to share with you today. So a couple of points I want to underscore before we even get into the interview, the content, and a bit of an introduction of Mike and Kim are that there are really 2 pieces of this. We spend most of our time in this interview focused on the pragmatic aspects of preparing for and then supporting parents as they get older and have less independence. But there really is another entire episode we could do about the emotional territory that goes with that. And so we get into it briefly at the end. But if you are in this chapter, I just want you to take a big deep breath and honor the incredible gift that you are giving to your parents in whatever way you are serving them through this chapter. And know that it is hard and it is a lot. And it is something that many of us were not well prepared for or taught. And so I hope today is a little bit of support for you that in very practical ways. And then Mike and Kim give you the places that you can go and find them online to get even more support if this is a chapter that you're really in the thick of as you listen to this right now. So Mike and Kim Barnes are the founders of an organization called Parenting Aging Parents. Both of them actually spent 30-year careers on television. And Kim's career was as a reporter doing the news, and Mike's was as a sportscaster. And so they are very familiar with being on the microphone and on the camera, and that definitely comes through in this episode. While they were building their careers and they were raising their own children, their parents started to need more help. And you're going to hear them tell some of the stories about that in their life and the challenges of dealing with health issues and moving them into retirement communities or memory care. And they realized through that journey that many, many people just aren't talking with anyone about the realities of dealing with that dynamic. And so they're kind of suffering in silence, so to speak. So Mike and Kim built a community and they put resources together to really help make this chapter easier, especially for working parents, which is where their heart is. And they're on a mission to have these conversations with as many people as possible before their parents' health becomes an issue. So we get into topics like how to balance that chapter where you have kids and careers and aging parents, really practical questions that we need to be asking our parents before we're in crisis, and why getting help is really the key to helping balance it all so that you can avoid isolation and overwhelm. So let me introduce you to Mike and Kim Barnes. Well, Kim and Mike, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Brilliant Balance Show.
Thank you. We're honored to be with you.
Yeah, good to be here.
Awesome. So I love to start these interviews with just a way for you to be humans being human, right? And tell us a little bit about what did today look like for you?
Well, we're only halfway through the day, or not even halfway. It's lunchtime. Let's see. So I've already been to the doctor this morning because I just found out that I have a cataract, which is really unusual for someone my age and a little alarming, and having to schedule surgery. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else. I was talking to my daughter who is just graduated from college and has just accepted a job. So she was having to talk to the other job offer to let them know that she wasn't going to take that one. And then after that, I came home and we've been on the phone with my mom trying to connect. Just gets funny, trying to connect a device that's supposed to be super, super simple to allow for us to be able to kind of a tablet that way we can FaceTime with her, but straight through the tablet, send her pictures, send her reminders. And that was kind of comical. Just trying to, we still haven't gotten it all figured out. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So all that to say, I feel like we've done the gamut of a little bit of having to do things for myself and, also, and in the middle, trying to answer a few work emails. Oh, by the way, we're trying to work at the same time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. My day's been not quite as exciting. Luckily, we're doing the same thing with that tablet with my dad, who lives up in the Dallas area, so about 3 hours away. And he has the box. He's all ready. He's like, well, should I open it? He called me twice already today. First, he said, should I open it? I said, no, let's not do anything until you make sure you have your Wi-Fi password. And he's like, well, don't you have that? It's like, no, I don't think I have that. I have almost every other password, but your Wi-Fi password is with the building that you live in. Yeah. So you need to check with them.
And note to self, you need to get that Wi-Fi password and write that down.
Get it in the binder.
So I said, well, I guess we'll do that later. He said, yeah, well, I'm going to go see your mom at 10. So I'll call you after that. I said, okay. So he went and saw my mom, and he called me after that. And he always gives me an update when he visits my mom and tells me what kind of mood she's in and how that went.
She's in memory care.
She's in memory care about 1.5 miles away. So nice and close. And he visits her all the time. And he said that it was basically okay. She said sometimes she says, I just don't understand why you get to run around and have fun and I'm here. Oh. And that comes up every once in a while, but she's gotten better and better, and he's gotten better and better at the way he deals with the redirecting and stuff like that. Anyway,
you got the update.
The visit was fine. And he said, I still don't have that password. Is there anything I need to do? I said, let's not do anything until you get that password.
So sweet. This generation, I saw both of my parents today. They were here. My kids are off school. And so they were hanging out with them today. And I sometimes just marvel at the technology curve that they have had to follow from, their birth in the 40s to what they are seeing today. It really is like, we got to cut them a break. It's astonishing what they've kept up with. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, and the perfect lead in to, our topic for today, since we've all spent time with our parents in some way, shape, or form today. And I would love it if you could just tell us a little bit about how you got into this work that you do. We've shared you run Parenting Aging Parents, and I think everyone would benefit from learning a little bit about how you ended up starting this and what's your story behind it.
There's a long history, but it's not that long of a story. My mom and dad are just a hair older than Kim's mom is. So I guess I took the lead on this because about 6 years ago or so, my mom has had Alzheimer's for almost 10 years now, I guess. And of course, it's very gradual. So it's gotten worse and worse and worse. But about 6 years ago, I have one sister, and we talked to my dad and said, look, y'all live about an hour outside of Dallas, kind of in the country, all by yourself in a fairly large house. So it's just the two of you. And because of mom's condition, you're getting up every morning, taking her to breakfast, coming home, taking her to lunch, coming home, taking her to dinner and coming home, which forget about the finances because you can afford that. But that's hard on you because you're getting to be close to 80 at the time. And mom's getting no social interaction because when you're not going out and just sitting across from a booth from each other to eat, she's downstairs sitting in front of a TV. I don't even know if she's comprehending what she's watching. And you're upstairs watching the stock market. So you need to move into an independent living place. And he was a little resistant at first because he pictured a nursing home like my grandfather lived in his last couple of years of living. But they finally toured a couple places, picked one out, moved in a little over 5 years ago. And he called me within 2 months and said, oh my gosh, son, this is the best decision we've ever made. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yes.
They had a great time in independent living until COVID hit, which, COVID made it tough because they couldn't really even leave their room for a while. But mom was getting worse and worse and worse. And it got so hard on my dad that my sister and I started looking into memory care. And as we looked into memory care, we felt very prepared because my dad had us all set up with their wills, power of attorney, medical directive. We talked financial stuff. We knew what they could afford. Can't be $1 million a year place, but we knew what could happen as we were looking at different memory care places, what our options were. And then we started touring places, and we walked in and we had no idea what we were looking at, what we were looking for, what questions we should ask. We were so overwhelmed, and we felt prepared. And I came home and I told Kim, I said, look, if we feel like this and we feel prepared, then most people have to be really overwhelmed, whether it's memory care or assisted living or anything like that.
Or just health conditions, things like that.
Yeah. So it was about over a year process, about a year and a half process before mom finally moved in to memory care last March. And that's partly because of my dad wanting to put it off, which I completely understand. And we told him he had to be behind it 100%. But I told Kim, I think we should start, I don't know, maybe a Facebook group for people to get together and be able to support each other, talk to each other and get ideas and just be able to vent.
And at first, when he mentioned the idea, I just thought, oh, that just sounds kind of depressing. It just doesn't sound like fun stuff to talk about. As a former reporter, I love being able to hear people's stories and tell those stories. But generally they're, inspirational, or they're more interesting, if you will. Sure. And so at the time I thought, oh gosh, this, do we really want to talk about all this stuff? But what I realized is that at the same time, my mom was having different challenges. She has probably been more of the issue of she's gotten scammed multiple times financially. She's had to have some major eye surgery that was not age related. It was just something, some basal cell carcinoma in her eyelid.
No, because could she drive?
That was a big thing. She couldn't drive anymore. So, do you teach them how to use Lyft? And what do you do about driving? And we had talked to her about moving into an independent living, which she totally resisted. Until she finally said, oh, I signed a lease. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? So that's a whole nother story.
Oh, gosh.
So it was like, on the one hand, fantastic that it's your idea, but let's don't sign legally binding documents without talking first, perhaps. But anyway, during this process, I realized that as much as I was finding myself sitting in one room, talking to my mom, potentially either to my mom or even to her bank branch manager, because who would have ever thought that I'd know the name and have him on speed dial? Right. But I do. I don't know my own branch manager, but I know my mom's. And we were just dealing with some of those issues. And then I would also hear Mike in the other room, potentially helping his dad fix his printer or, whatever the issue was at the time, whatever challenge it was at the time. And then it was really after Mike's mom moved to memory care, and he posted one thing on social media about just how tough it was. And what I noticed, besides the lots and lots of people, of course, that responded with great empathy, what I really noticed and picked up on were the number of people who said, "Tell me more." And I've done the same thing, or I'm in the middle of it myself, or gosh, I think that's in my near future. That I came back to Mike and said, okay, you're right. There are a lot of people that are having these challenges. And what I had realized, even just amongst my own friends, we don't talk about it. Mm-mm. Nobody talks about it. And so you feel like, surely I must be the only person that's dealing with this while I'm trying to help my kids do something and I'm working. And you just think that nobody else would really understand because surely I'm the only person going through this, until you broach the subject and you quickly realize, oh no, we're all dealing with something, whether it's a grandparent, an aunt, a parent, whatever it is, we all have something like this that we're going through, and just nobody really talks about it. Because,
and if we don't yet, we will. Right. For anyone who is saying, well, no, I don't, not your turn yet. Right. But I think
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, if you're married and potentially you have 4 parents, potentially, or maybe more, and amongst those, chances are good that somebody's going to have a challenge.
Right.
And, or you've had you have grandparents or aunts and uncles. And so I think that's the challenge and it's not just if, it's when. And one of the things that we realized is that so many of these things you need to be prepared for, because there are so many of the things that if you wait until you really need them, like the legal documents, it's too late.
Yes. Yes. So that is, a great transition to, I was reading through some of your material before we talked and thinking about how much this reminds me of preventive healthcare. Mm-hmm. Because, in preventive healthcare, we're always saying the best defense is a good offense. What can you do to sort of stay out ahead of things? And this feels similar. And yet, again, maybe much like preventive healthcare, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to go for screenings because it's like we're invoking the potential of some future, kind of negative event that we might be involved in. So your guidance is there are very practical questions we should be asking or discussions we should be having before we need them with our parents. And let's say, and tell me if I'm right about this, this is probably mostly, is it related to my age or my parents' age when I should start thinking about this?
I mean, I think it really just depends. I almost don't think it's too early to start asking because, this is where I think it's really tricky, is that with kids, there's very definite sort of expected milestones, and you expect kids to do things within a certain range. Well, the older we get, there really is no formula for that, because somebody can have a condition at 60. My grandparents lived to be 95 and 98, and we're still sharp at the end. Mm-hmm. And yet then you have people who have early onset Alzheimer's, or you have somebody that just has a stroke when they're 50.
Yeah.
And so that I think is what makes it really hard, is that there's not sort of those predictable stages of like, oh, we're at this stage. So
it's really never too early. Like anyone listening today, even if you're feeling like, oh, this is not, it's probably never, and maybe healthier to start those conversations way before you need them, if possible.
Yeah. Well,
so sorry.
I was going to say, so, we went ahead and just from learning the stuff that we're learning, we went ahead and got, all of the POAs and all of the legal stuff done for our children. And they have their own now. Mm-hmm. And that's also a great thing to do.
They're in their early 20s.
Right. And that's a great thing to do when your kids go off to college anyway. And we had done it a little bit, but we made it more official. But, you have to get the HIPAA, you have to get the medical directives and things like that feel a little bit scary to be making those decisions at 22, what my medical directive, and do I want advanced measures and blah, blah, blah. But I think, so some of that is the more we talk about it with our parents, it can also help us be more proactive to be helpful and put these in place for our children.
Yep.
And I'm sure there's a long list of them, but maybe just let's talk about a few. What are a few practical questions that we need to be asking our parents, or discussions we need to be initiating to just sort of get this ball rolling?
Do they have a will?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things, is a will and a power of attorney, because again, by the time you need it, it's too late. Mm-hmm. If mom or dad goes into the hospital and they can't sign, or they can't help themselves to represent themselves, to have a power of attorney, or whether it's a durable power of attorney or a medical power of attorney, you're sunk. And then, what do I do then? So the legal thing is very, very big because again, it could be too late, but there's so much stuff that you need to talk about early on. And if our kids talk to us about it today, they're in their early 20s, we're in our 50s, I wouldn't be insulted, but because you need to talk about housing. Where do you want to live? Where do you expect to live? When you get to be 75, 80, 85 years old, are you planning on still staying in the same house? Do you want to live in a smaller house, a smaller apartment?
Do I want to live with you?
Yeah. And that kind of ties into what can you afford? And maybe that's hard to do when you have to talk about your finances with your kids. But at some point you have to broach that subject and say, you know what? Times are tough. Dad didn't have a great job while you were growing up. So I may be living with y'all. Or it may be a case of, you know what? We've saved our money well. We want to live in independent living. And we already have a couple of places that we've kind of looked at and had our eyes on. We don't think we'll be there for 10 or 20 years, but eventually, something like that. So talk about that because we have so many people in our Parenting Aging Parents group who haven't broached that subject, and they have moms and or dads who are still at home. And it's a case of, and they don't even want to talk about leaving.
Yeah. Well, and I do think it can be very uncomfortable depending on the privacy that the parents have kind of protected for over their lifetime. Some parents are not going to talk about money with their kids or some of these medical, decisions or issues, and others are more open. So there may be some skills that we need to build as the children for how we keep those doors open, or maybe even allow them to document it and not have big discussions, but we know where we're accessing that, documentation when the time comes.
Right. Because it can be very difficult because of different personalities, different family dynamics. There are so many things at play that really do impact either how private they're going to be, how open they're going to be, but having just a sense of, do you have a pension? Do you have a 401k? Things like that you sort of have a little bit of an idea of their financial picture would be really helpful because we hear really sad stories in our group as well of people whose parents don't have the financial resources. And so they're trying to decide, do I take money out of my 401k to help pay for my parents' care? Or what do I do? It's really an overwhelming, there's a lot of really overwhelming decisions.
Yeah. And know that your parents' attitudes can change. My dad was a CFO for years and years and years, worked for the same company for 49 years. And while I was growing up, I could tell you stories that would make you laugh about how private he was with his money.
Yes.
Not only just with people, but with me and with my sister. One time I was with him when he was buying a car and the person said, how much money do you make? And he said, how much do I need to make to buy this car? And the guy said, well, 72,000 or so. I said, okay, that's what I make. Okay. He was so private as I was growing up.
Yes.
And now, for the last, 20 years, 15 years, he basically gives my sister and me a quarterly report and lists out every single asset that he has and how much money he and my mom have so that we know what they can afford and so that we can help him. We're still not doing financial stuff for him. Oh my gosh.
Right.
There's no way he would let us do that because
that's right.
He is a money man. He says, watch your pennies, let the dollars take care of themselves. He knows how to save his money, but he still wants us to know so that we can have an idea about what they can afford, what we can afford for memory care and independent living.
What I'm hearing you say is there's a practicality of, the will, the power of attorney, their housing situation, their financial picture, their preferences about certain decisions that might be made around health or medical care. Knowing those things and having the conversation in a way that they know it's an act of kindness to equip you to help support them should they need it, right? That you're not trying to be up in their business. But there are practicalities that you can't handle if you don't have access to this information. Now, parents will handle that differently, I'm sure. So everyone listening is going to have to kind of navigate the political dynamics or in their own family. But knowing what's important information to be gathered and what are those conversations to have, because otherwise you're having them under stress, under duress later.
Right. In a crisis. And that is the worst time to be trying to either gather information or trying to find out their wishes. And I think, really exactly what you said, it is such a gift for them to give to us, just like it is for us to do this for our own children. But it is such a gift so that it just makes the process a lot easier. And I think that we created a guidebook, The Caregiver's Key, which is basically a place where you can house all of this important information, and whether you want to give it to your parents and ask them to fill it out for you so that you don't have to actually talk about, where is your passport, or, what is the alarm code for your house or whatever. But that way you just have all that information handy so that when you need it, you have it, and you don't have to worry about, do I even know the next door neighbor's name? And I have to go try to, knock on their door and ask them a question.
But make sure they don't feel like just because they're signing a power of attorney doesn't mean that you're enacting it and you're taking away their money and their house and everything. Right. Like, no, it's just for when it happens, that it's going to be such a gift, because that way I don't have to worry about that. All I have to do is worry about you and what's going on, what's wrong with you at the time. I don't have to worry about how we're going to pay your bills, how we're going to take care of the house, how we're going to take care of Medicare, anything like that. That'll be taken care of because we have that power of attorney, whether it's durable or medical, but we have that taken care of. All I have to worry about is the crisis at hand.
Right. Well, and even like you becoming a signer on the banking accounts makes such a huge difference if you are going to need to be paying bills for them or doing things like that. But again, it's helping them understand that, I have a debit
the money.
Right? Yeah. I have a debit card for my mom now, but that is used only so that I can use the Zelle app to pay her hairdresser every time she gets her hair done.
Right.
So that's the only purpose for it. So obviously there has to be trust in your family so that they are comfortable with that, but it can just make things so much easier. And again, you have to figure out what works in your family. We manage all of my mom's finances now because she's gotten scammed a few times, and there's been some little bit of red flags of checks more frequently to the same people, charitable donation, those kinds of things. And so we handle all that, and we just really approach it from a point of view of, Mom, we're just wanting to take this away for you not to have to worry about it anymore. You've managed this your whole life. She's been very independent, was divorced for a long time. And then after she remarried, but after her husband died, she was back, and she's always handled her finances. So I know that's been a hard thing, but we just really try to stress the fact that, like, all you need to worry about is going to play dominoes at 3, go to the exercise class at 11, and walk around when you have a chance, but you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Do you ever find yourself saying, I just need a minute to breathe? While the whole idea of meditation can sound totally intimidating, I've found that stepping away from the chaos of life, even just for a few minutes, is incredibly restorative. So if you're short on time, but could use a few moments of peace right about now, listen to my 5-minute meditation for working moms. It'll help you clear your head and come back to your day feeling centered and refreshed. Head over to brilliant-balance.com/breathe. Press play and settle in for a few mini moments of peace right now.
I have a question related to those services that we could start taking over and helping with. And, I watched my mom and dad cared for both of their mothers when I was like growing up. And then my mom cared for a dear friend who was like an aunt to me and managed a lot of these same kinds of things that you're discussing. So because of that experience, she's built a lot of these tools that you're referencing, like the binder where everything lives, mission control and accessing the bank accounts early and power of all these sort of good proactive steps. But I can imagine scenarios where, for a variety of reasons, they may want to have everything ready, but not press go. Like, I'd like to have this equipped, but it's not invocable yet. Is there a way to delay the execution? Like, be prepared to, let's say, put their adult children as signatures on the bank accounts, but not have it, don't press go yet. Is there a way to do that?
And I'm certainly no lawyer, but if I remember right, I think it can be dependent on how you set up your POA.
Yes.
Okay.
It's some of those things that you can make it so that it goes into place in a certain scenario.
Circumstances. I think that could be helpful for some families that are navigating, like, I want to protect this as long as possible, but I also am aware that there might be a point where, that's where we flip the switch. So just for people listening, that might be something to ask your attorneys as a lot of these things are going to require having an attorney.
Sure.
It's fairly simple to make this happen. These documents they do every day. I've coached lots of women who are super stressed out about getting a will established, and it's really not that hard, guys.
Right.
deal with somebody who does it every day, right? It can be a very simplified process. You don't have to list every possession you own. And
That's right.
And I'm saying that we can laugh, but I'm telling you, that is a deterrent for some. The conceptualization of a will is that it's a really hard process, and it's not. It can be actually very simple.
That ties into another thing that is needed for a lot of people is you need to be on the same page as much as you can with your siblings. Mm-hmm. And I only have one sister. Kim only has one brother. So it's a little bit easier there. But oh my gosh, if you have 5 siblings,
or even just 2 who don't agree.
Yeah, but the more you have, the easier it is to find some disagreements. But just make sure that just because the brother who lives there close to mom, or maybe it's the sister who lives far away but has an MBA, says, "Oh no, I'm going to be in charge of this." When people do that, there could be a little bit of friction. But we like to tell people that the more you're on the same page, A, the easier it is, but B, for everyone should know, don't take it personally. Because you want to make things the easiest that it can be. And whether that's for mom and dad or for a brother or a sister, like, okay, you're busy with 4 kids. Don't get involved in this because you're so tied up with that. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of that because I can do that. And so don't take it personally. I just want to make it easier for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And there are extremes in the spectrum. I am an only child, so nobody to be in conflict with. My mother-in-law is one of 11. So, and then you think about as they navigated this with their parents, the dynamics of 11 people trying to come to consensus on these are real, right? Listeners will be in various places and they'll be navigating these challenges at various times in their own lives. So I think one of the things we talk about a lot is the caregiver burden that's associated with various types of caregiving, right? And when you are doing a couple at the same time, managing children at home, let's say, who are have high needs, and your parents are in a high need state at the same time, that really can be time consuming and emotionally draining. Mm-hmm. What are some things that make it worse or better for people that you have worked with?
I mean, we just hear so many stories in our group from people who are in their 30s and have a parent living with them, and they have really young children. And working or trying to work. And man, those people I feel so for, because it is really hard when you are still driving carpool and if you're driving carpool for the kid and then thinking, oh, I need to take mom to a doctor's appointment. So I think that certainly being in that stage of life where you're still very actively involved in driving your kids around, and you have parents who you are needing to do that with as well. So challenging. Mm-hmm. I also think, though, that for many of us, you're sort of supposed to be in the height of your career, if you will, at this age. And, fortunately for us, our kids were high school, college-ish when most of this started really becoming more of an issue. We've been real open with our kids, so they know, what happened to, I won't say my mom's name, but like, what happened to mom again? They know these things so that they are aware. But fortunately, I wasn't still driving carpool, if you will. Yeah. Or having to shuttle them every place. But so I think that certainly the younger your kids are and the earlier the challenges start with your parents, I mean, that's going to be...
That makes it harder for sure.
For sure.
The biggest thing is that you have to stay organized, which I know is easier said than done sometimes. For us, again, my dad lives about 3 hours away and my mom and Kim's mom lives about 3 hours away. So if we need to do something there, okay, that wipes out a day. We're going to leave in the morning. We're going to take care of it. We're going to come back at night. But there's nothing we can do that day, whether it's something with our business, whether it's something with our kids, it wipes out the day. So you have to be organized in that respect. But it goes back to what I said earlier about don't take it personally and think about having kids.
Right.
Where when you missed out on something as an adult, some adult fun because little Johnny had a soccer game or little Janie had a dance recital or something like that. Oh, and I missed on that. And well, I'm getting to watch my kid. Well, it wasn't their kid's choice. They're just living their life. And it's the same thing with your elderly, aging mom or dad. They didn't choose to have these problems, but this comes up where you need to help them, and you're going to miss out on something. Something's going to come up that you're going to miss out on. They didn't choose that. Don't take it personally. They're not planning at home going, how can I make Kim's life difficult today?
Really be resentful. I wonder if the same principles that I coach women who are raising children about apply here, which is, if there is a newly demanding burden coming your way, in this case from your parents who did not ask to be, right, but are in fact creating extra work for you to handle, the leaning further into things like outsourcing and delegating and simplifying the rest of your life. Like there's something about just acknowledging there is a big giant pile of work coming my way. And it's not a zero-sum game. Like it has to go, or I guess it is a zero-sum game. It has to go somewhere. So what am I going to take off or ignore or delay to sort of create an accommodation for this? Otherwise, I think that's where people really get buried is I'm not giving myself relief in any other aspect of my life. I'm still having the same expectations of my standards, right? And I'm trying to do this massive incremental thing. So how do you work with people on creating some, room to take on this new responsibility?
Well, I think I'm not the best at managing all of the different things at once, just to be honest, that it can get very, very overwhelming. I think the other thing is that we're trying to remember too, that we want to be present and we want to be in the moment because these are our parents and these are the people that have raised us and who we've gone to for advice and all of the people that have been just our parents. And so it's so strange when those dynamics start shifting and changing to where you are having to make more, not necessarily making the decisions, but having to bring up those discussions. And so I think it really is challenging, but also so trying to be, live in the moment, if you will, while you're trying to do all these other things. So one, I think for me, it's just trying to be present in that moment of where I am right that minute. It doesn't do me any good to be stressed about something with work if I am needing to help my mom with something right this minute,
right,
and being distracted and not really being able to pay attention to either of them very well. So I think that's one of the things that I try to think about is, okay, I need to just block out the other stuff for just a few minutes. I need to focus on this and trying to think of kind of those one thing at a time. Yeah. Easier said than done, at least for me.
We also hear from so many people who say they feel so alone because I'm going through this. No one else is going through something like this. And it's so burdening, so overwhelming. And we like to compare it in some ways to having a baby, because when you have your baby, that first baby, you're so overwhelmed because you know how to
know what to do.
Maybe you know how to change a diaper, but otherwise it's like, I don't know what burping. Okay. What do we do? Teething. I don't know what to do. But so many people are coming around, relatives, friends, neighbors, and saying, oh, what you need to do with little Johnny is do like that. It's going to be fine. Do like this and it's going to be fine. And as they get older, whether it's walking or crawling or, playing t-ball or what, they keep giving you ideas and suggestions because it's something fun and there's something good at the end.
Sure.
In this case, when it's aging parents, you aren't going around and having neighbors saying, you know what? You got some incontinence problems. Let me tell you what I did.
Right.
That just doesn't come up.
Right.
But
there are so many people going through the same thing. And,
it just should.
Right.
And if you can open up and not be afraid, whether it's in our group or just with people that who are friends or acquaintances, to ask that advice and say, have you gone through this? Because I'm having trouble with it. And do you have any suggestions?
Candidly, Mike, because there are resources that you don't know are there until you need them. Yes. I'm watching my dad navigate some issues with his oldest brother, and then they don't have children. So my parents are stepping in to support. And there are just resources that I think it was my godmother shared because she had used them with her parents who lived in the same town. And so there is this sort of like, if you are willing to be open about an unmet need, someone can step in who says, oh, I've been there. I've done that. I know how to solve that problem. And that is massively helpful when you're navigating uncharted waters.
And that is exactly what we quickly found in this private Facebook group. We thought back in April, okay, let's just try it and see if people are interested in talking about it. And then what we quickly realized when there are dozens and then hundreds and then thousands of people joining.
Crowdsourcing. Yeah.
Wow, there are a lot of people that are having this challenge who all felt like they didn't have anybody to talk to about this. And now they're all together.
Yeah.
And what I also realized too, is that as we've learned a lot more with the interviews that we've done with experts to try to learn all of these different things, sometimes with the topics that selfishly I need to know. So let's interview somebody about Medicare because I need to learn more. But what I realized is that there are a ton of services and providers out there who can help you if you need it in this process, whether it's an elder attorney or somebody who does music therapy, and there's all kinds of things. But as the adult child, you don't even know that they exist, what they're called. How do you find them? What do I Google? Sure. And so having the place where you can come And really that's what really our goal is how do we connect people so that they know the information they need and or connect them to the resources that can help them if they need some assistance beyond just the information, because there are so many people that can make this easier. And when you feel supported, like you can when you're in part of a group like this, it just makes you feel like, okay, I'm not crazy. Yeah. Right. I'm not the only one. And wow, okay, I think I can,
that community aspect.
Yes. Such a huge difference.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot today about sort of, I would say, the practical or pragmatic aspects of managing, the business affairs of, the medical affairs of, the housing affairs of. There's also, and I think we'd be really remiss not to say this, an extremely emotional component of watching your parents decline in some way, shape, or form. I have been very, very fortunate with my parents till now. But as I watch the women in our community, and we've had a couple of health dips with my parents that we've navigated, the emotional piece of that is not to be overlooked. And I think that's where your community is so powerful, I'm sure, because there's not just practical advice, but also that empathy, of people who are walking the same road and can relate to how difficult it is to watch your parents move through some of these later stages of life.
Yeah, because you have to remember, again, what the aging parents are going through. Because like you mentioned earlier, they were born in the 30s or the 40s. They've been through a little bit different time period. Things were a lot different for them growing up compared to when we were growing up. When we moved my mom into memory care, before that happened, my sister and I convinced my dad that they should sell their house because they didn't live there anymore. They still had it, but they didn't live there anymore. And my dad was a little reluctant at first because he said, it's the last thing I own. I mean, he still has money in the bank, but I don't own anything. This just feels weird because that's a symbol of achievement. That's a status symbol. Yes. Yeah, especially in the 40s, 50s, 60s. I know things have changed a little bit, but it was hard for him, and you had to be empathetic about that and realize, Dad, this is going to be the best. It'll give you money to pay for mom's memory care, but you don't need that. I mean, you're 80 plus years old and you're out there still trying to mow the yard at this, 6 acres of land. There's no reason for you to do that. Give it up and enjoy life. And it's still so hard to let go. And so you have to be empathetic about what they're going through, whether it's that or having to admit that I'm going to die someday. So let me sign a will, or I'm going to have problems someday. Let me sign a power of attorney. It's just hard to give up that. To give up that control.
Absolutely. So you're navigating this challenging chapter. To your point, the difference between early childhood, when you have babies and toddlers who are very hard, right? But there's the joyfulness of watching like progress and growth. And I think there is this different energy quality to this other stage.
For sure.
You two have been just extraordinarily helpful. I'm so glad that we got connected and got to have you on the show. I want to make sure that our listeners know where they can find you online. So give us the website or the Facebook group and where they should go.
Sure.
The easiest place to go is just to go to parentingagingparents.com. That's our website. There are dozens and dozens of interviews that we've done with experts, as well as just a button that you can click on that takes you right to the Facebook group if you'd like to join and be part of the community.
Yeah. And again, it's a private Facebook group. So we say, everything's open. Don't be afraid to say anything, vent about something, complain about something, ask any question. There are no dumb questions out there. And there are so many great questions that are asked. And when they're asked, so many people jump in and try to give you help.
Awesome. And you had mentioned earlier this sort of like binder resource of questions. And can they find that on your website as well? The way to get that?
Yes, they can.
The caregiver's key.
Caregiver's key. Excellent. I know that everybody listening at the beginning was probably like, why did you not tell me where to find that immediately? So now you know. So it's parentingagingparents.com and you can check it out. Kim and Mike, thank you so much for being with me today. It was great to meet you. You're doing great work in the world that all of us are going to need in some way, shape, or form eventually. So thank you for doing what you do.
It was our pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode. I bet if you did that this is a topic that is either already in your everyday life or that you see as being on the horizon. So I really hope you got some resources today that you can use right away. I would definitely encourage you to think about that binder. This is something that my mom did proactively after she had been through the experience of caregiving for several people in her life. And it is such a treasure to know that all of these important pieces of information and choices and preferences are documented somewhere. I know it was a labor of love to put that together. And so your parents may need some support in getting that created, but I promise you, you will thank yourself 1,000 times over if you know that it is there and ready when you need it. So that is all for today's episode. If you would like to come join us in this community, go to Facebook, search groups for Brilliant Balance, and come on in. We are absolutely there for you to provide support through whatever challenges you're navigating in this stage of life that are making balance a challenge. And we love being there for you. So that is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.